John. Welcome to John. The whole point about the Black Goo is that it's been talked about, seen on movies, people have had lectures about it, but there have been all sorts of discussion about this. This is the very first time. We're very grateful to you, sir, for coming in public to talk about what happened in the Falklands, about a sentient fluid, and whatever else you have to say, which you said was complicated. And I would invite you to go really into the detail and don't stop talking until we all know everything about it.
Or until everybody's asleep.
No, they won't be asleep. Now, this is important. So with no further ado, John.
Okay. Thank you. Right, this is quite difficult for me because usually...
You let me go to the shop.
Okay, this is quite difficult for me because usually if I speak to a group of people, they're usually about 8 years old. Well, they used to be up until about 2 years ago. I have to try and go back now, go back in time to 1982. I was a soldier originally in the Royal Engineers, and you remember what happened, I'm sure, how things escalated, and all I remember about the escalation was having to go to Hereford and to have blood tests done, to have injections done, and to be given new kit and stuff. I was a corporal at that time, and I'd been in the army about 3 years. And even though there was lots of rumours about things that we were going to see and things we were going to do, nobody actually believed any of it. I don't know if there's anybody else here that's been in the army or in the services, but you get told lots of things and it doesn't really ever sort of turn out the way that you expect them to. The reason being that I suppose that the detail gets lost in the action, somewhat I suppose. In 1982, I was aboard a ship called HMS Antrim, and that ship was our HQ. I was attached to a regiment, a special regiment. I won't go into details as to what they were. Our commanding officer was Sir Peter de Billiere. We used to call him SPDB for short. And we were set ahead of the task force, and we were going to go to South Georgia, and we went there and the weather was terrible. I could tell you about what happened on the way and all the story of that. That's quite interesting, but when we got down there, we were landed on the Fortuna Glacier, and it was very bad, and we lost people that day and that night actually. There was a garrison of Argentinian soldiers there. We were supposed to be relieving them of duty. We did eventually, but it took a lot of doing. And if you go to Hereford and you go to St. Martin's Church and you go in the churchyard at the back, you will see lots of names on tombstones there at the back that were involved that day. It's quite difficult actually to talk about it like this. Quite emotional really. So we got sent down to South Georgia. I was a corporal, and my forte was explosives. I was quite good with an SLR as well, but obviously it was the explosives that I was needed for. This was before the main landings of the task force, and about a week or two before it really hotted up. And so we went from South Georgia and then went back and rejoined through Antrim on the ship HMS Antrim, and rejoined with the main task force, and we did the Falklands thing. We did lots of stuff to do with the Falklands that were quite above board, as far as nothing exceptionally odd about the situation, as far as there was lots of contact, there was lots of small battles Goose Green comes to mind, where lots of people were lost there. There were other things as well going on. Somebody that I went to school with was killed on HMS Glamorgan. I didn't know until after the conflict that he died. He was a signalman on board HMS Glamorgan. And there was lots of strange things happening. I'll tell you one story so that I can try and get rid of my nerves a bit. One thing that happened that I thought was quite funny at the time, but probably not that funny really, was a strange smell that seemed to follow us wherever we went. We were dropped behind the enemy lines and we would gather intelligence, and then we would communicate back the intelligence where the strength of the enemy was. And so the people who were directing the campaign could work out which direction they were going to go next with whatever they were going to do. The smell turned out to be a foot that somebody placed in somebody else's backpack. And it followed us. It followed us for about 2 weeks, I think, before anybody worked out. And that's the kind of situation it was. And we thought it was quite funny at the time because we were all very young, all very innocent, and maybe we missed a lot of stuff that was going on that maybe we should have noticed. It wasn't until after the liberation of Port Stanley and all the terrible things that happened just prior to that, 2 days before Port Stanley was really very, very, very bloody. I don't know really what they wrote about it in the press over here, but it was how you would imagine a real battle to be. There was no mucking around. There wasn't many prisoners. If you were caught without a weapon or without ammunition, then you had a good chance of being killed, and all that sort of thing was going on and did happen. So at the end of it, we were all rather relieved. So we thought we'll get back to England and we'll get some downtime, have a good rest. We'd lost friends and comrades, and we were wondering why, really, because it wasn't much of an island and we'd been sent all that way. And there was lots of rumours about different things, but nobody really took any notice. And to be honest with you, we just made a joke out of things in those days. Then we were diverted to another place. We thought we were coming back, and we were diverted to what we called Thule Island, but you call something else. There's lots of different pronunciations for it. There was 3 large Royal Naval ships, and there was a submarine. And I was on one of the ships, and nobody actually went onto the island to begin with. What happened was, for a few hours at least, the island was bombarded by one of the ships. Now, not a lot of people get told that, but that's actually what happened. We didn't just assault the island and hope that our casualty numbers would be low. What happened was we stayed on the ships, and there was quite a big bombardment that went on for a few hours. In fact, some of the refinery was damaged before we even got ashore. When we did get ashore, nobody fired at us. We'd been told that they'd surrendered and that there was going to be no problem. So we got ashore, and there was 10 individuals there. 3 of them, strangely enough, had American accents, and they were American. I don't care what anybody says, they were definitely American. And the others were Argentinian, Spanish, although one may have been French. They were particularly interested in diverting our attention away from where this building is. They wanted us to be there. They didn't want us around the corner, round in the other bay. So by this time, I'd overcome my nerves on the island, on the Falkland Islands, and I'd had a promotion, and I was given the task to go and have a look around the corner at the other bay and see if there was anything around there of interest. On the horizon, another ship appears, and it's not a standard naval ship, it's a cargo ship, a big one. The sort that you would put these big, what do they call them now, the big containers, like a big container ship. Didn't think anything of it, thought it was just supplies. There was nothing much there, but then we noticed what we thought was a very large cave. And the cave, the entrance to it, if you imagine the side of this room as like like an alcove, a sloped roof or entrance, that's how big it was. You could get probably 3 or 4 cars inside it. So we went inside to have a look, and what we saw when we got in there was quite amazing because it was quite beautiful. Hello? When we got in there, it was quite beautiful because it wasn't just ice, it was blue ice. It was a light blue ice. And the floor, the ground, had been deliberately ridged to key it so that if you went in there, you didn't fall over straight away and break your neck. There was, always remember this is an odd thing to remember, but there was a shovel propped up against the far wall. I don't know why. Perhaps it was the person who dug it all out, I don't know. But it did go back a long way. And as we went further inside, we realised that there were containers inside the cavern. They were on a slightly receding slope going back into the distance. So now my mind is back there and I'm thinking of exactly what it was like. It was cold. Of course it was cold. But they seemed to have some kind of thermostatic control system in there as well that was making it even colder. So we went so far in and I said to my lads, I don't know if we want to bother going all the way in because this is, you know, it was really so cold that you were literally, your chest was hurting as you were breathing. So I said, why don't we all just, was my usual saying when I was in the army, why don't we all just pop outside a minute and have a cigarette? So we did. And while we were outside, it was only a few meters and we were outside in the open again, the difference in the temperature was incredible, the change in the climate. So we had a break, we had a blow, and then we went back inside again. We didn't think that there would be anything in there, but we could make out shapes of objects, and as we got further back in, about 4 meters, 5 meters in, it became obvious there was containers inside. The containers were about that high off the ground, and they were about as wide as from the end of that desk to about the beginning of this bench seat here. So they were about that wide and about that high. And they were blue. And they were a light blue, almost the same kind of blue that the ice was inside the cave. I don't know if it was an attempt to camouflage them or what, it just seemed very odd. But what was even more odd was the fact that they were not made of metal, they were not made of ice. The only way I can explain what they were made of, they were made of a kind of thick plastic that I'd never seen before and I've not seen since. There was markings on one side, on one of the long sides of each one. There was a huge amount of them in there. In my memory, which is, I mean, this was a long time ago, I remember there was maybe 35, 40, maybe more in there. But the thing that stands out is how difficult it was to have a look further back to see how many more there actually were, because they were connected. And they were connected not by pipes or anything like that, but the containers themselves had like I meant to draw a picture of this actually, they had like a hooking system, a bit like a puzzle, how a puzzle would join together, but not that simple. It was very odd and very tricky because When we got back outside and I reported back to Antrim and said what we'd found there, I was told, yeah, that's okay, we were expecting that. Now stay there and we're going to send some more equipment round. In the meantime, excuse me, the people who were on the island were off and they were on their way off. They were taken away. They were on another ship, they were gone. The cargo ship got nearer, and one of the other ships, naval ship, I think it was a frigate, was offloading equipment. And I was just told to stand there and guard the perimeter. Well, that means in a wartime situation that you actually make what they call a harbour area, and you get people who have to fan out and have to get ready to load and fire. But there was nobody else there. When these boats came round to the bay that we were in, with the equipment that they had, there was lots of chains and stuff like that. And there was another person there who was a Royal Engineer who said to me, because he was higher than me in rank, he was a captain, if I remember rightly, he said to me, you can help, but I don't want you interfering with this, because I know you're ex-Royal Engineers. Sorry, I know you're Royal Engineers, and you're supposed to be dealing with the explosives there, back ran into the other bay. So I said, well, I can't be in two places at once, let me just help with this. And me and my squad of men, we helped drag these large containers out of this cavern, this huge cave, and they were put on special pallets. These pallets were moved with small half tracks. They were like small tractors, but they had half tracks on the back. And they were moved to the water's edge. And then, using a pulley system, this is boring, this is the boring bit. They swung them onto this frigate and then they were moved to the big cargo ship. 2 at a time. They were checked for radioactivity. I've got no idea what the readings were. I was pushed out of the way quite a bit, actually, at this bit. I had no idea about what was inside them. But as I'm standing there, as I was stood there watching with my men and we were talking, we thought, wonder what it is. It must be oil or something. Because you naturally assumed oil refinery, oil. But why would it be in such complex containers underground like this? It didn't really make a lot of sense. This took hours and hours. Meanwhile, round there, somebody's already setting charges and they're going to demolish it. And that's what they did. They completely demolished it. There is a photograph of let me see, it might come up. Help. There is a photograph of I used to teach IT as well. Yes, that's it, thank you. Thank you, Miles. In this photograph, where actually you can see it's been damaged already. This is after the cavern incident. We got back there. I'm the good looking one in the middle. But that actually is my group. And we've gone back there after. But let's get back to this cavern again and what was going on there. We knew that something wasn't right about these containers because of the markings, because of the material that they were made with, and also the way that they were joined together. And the fact that they'd obviously been stored in even lower temperatures than would seem necessary. There was nothing on the ground. There was no spots of oil or anything like that. In fact, apart from the shovel, standing up against the wall in one corner, it was pristine. It was incredible, really, because outside, I don't know if you know anything about these islands, but they are like rubbish dumps, really. People who've been there before, they've left rubbish, or there's been stuff that's been washed in from other islands. And at one time, this was used by whalers as a whaling station, I believe. And there was bits and pieces there from that, as well as carcasses of dead animals penguins and stuff. We didn't feel that good when we were there. In fact, we put it down to the fact that we'd been inside and it was so cold. The other people who'd taken over the loading from the cavern had all of a sudden appeared with these really thick coats and stuff on. I mean, we were there just in normal uniforms. And even a winter 5/8 pattern uniform in those days, which was quite good, wasn't good enough to keep us not even slightly warm. It was incredibly cold. A friend, somebody who I was there with who's now dead, claimed that he managed to look in and see what was inside, and he said it was oil. But he also said the odd thing about it was when he lifted the lid, and I don't know how he managed to lift the lid because I couldn't even see where a lid was. He claimed, this is in the pub a few years later when we're talking about it, he claimed that the oil seemed attracted by him looking and actually began to change its position within the container and started to move towards him. So, when I think back about what happened, and also when we returned to ship, we had to be debriefed. And being very cocky and know-it-all and all the rest of it, I asked what it was, and I was told to mind my own business, and it was way beyond my pay grade, way beyond my rank, and that I should forget all about it, really. It was just another job. Well done. Good job done. And oddly enough, when we were moving away from the island, individually we had to go back into the wardroom, we had to re-sign the Official Secrets Act again. It did seem a bit different. So I could get arrested in a moment. It might turn up or something. Wouldn't surprise me. That time in my life, like it would be for most people, I'm sure, it was really pivotal, and it was an experience, a strange experience that would have great significance and would affect me a great deal in the future. At the time, I was just an ordinary lad who was rather gung-ho, had a fascination with explosives, and as time went by, another 8 years I put up with being in the army, in the Special Forces Regiment. I packed it all in and became a teacher. And thinking back to what happened in the 1980s after, and there was always the whispers as well. I can remember going up to London to have a reunion at the Special Forces Club in London. And we got talking about South Georgia, about a few of the things that happened on the main islands and what happened there. Because it just didn't make sense after everything we'd been through, everything we'd witnessed and seen and done, to have a task like this and then to be told just to stand over there out of the way just seemed a bit odd. There was all sorts of rumours going around at the time about some stuff that was brought back from the South Atlantic, and that somebody was saying, one of the group that I was with, that we didn't go down there for the Falklands, we went down there for this stuff that we recovered from this large cavern. And then, consequently, not long after, there was a big article, I think it was serialised in Telegraph or something, and it was about the Marconi deaths. So, if I fast forward to the early 90s, I think it was 91, 92, I was working in Gloucestershire. And I can remember talking to somebody who was, I won't name the person, but somebody who was a good friend, still is a good friend, who was working in Cheltenham at one of the round buildings that they've got there. he said to me, "You were involved with South Georgia and the sandwiches." We used to call it sandwiches. I said, "Yes." "Why?" He said, "Can you remember what happened?" And I can remember sitting down, excuse me, and talking to him about what happened, and him saying to me, "You do realise a lot of people have died because of what you brought back." And I thought, I just don't know what you mean. Brought back, what do you mean? He claimed, excuse me, he claimed that what we brought back was being used by Marconi GEC in Cheltenham and was being used in an experimental way, and he wouldn't say any more than that. He was and still is working there, not at Marconi, but at the other place where they like to have them with their coffee. And he won't get into trouble because nobody in this room knows who he is, and nobody there would know who I'm referring to. So when the deaths started to pile up, and then eventually there was a book written about it. I can't remember what year it was written, can you?
I think it was about 85, 6, around there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, when it got written, I think it was a bit like Spycatcher. I think they tried to stop it from being published, if I remember rightly anyway. I know that it was a good read, but it wasn't something that was advertised, and it wasn't something that was in the bestsellers list. And I've just put two and two together, or one and one together, if you like, and I think that definitely we were involved with something that was very sinister, actually. Throughout my life since then, I've had things happen to me that have been extremely odd. Like how I just spun from being a soldier into being a primary school teacher, and how I've been asked to do favours for certain people when I've been working abroad. And I've worked in countries like Spain, Italy, America, and France. And some of the stuff that I've witnessed when I've been working in these places are definitely weird. But I would go into details on those a bit more at some other time. I came here today because I just wanted to tell you what had happened, the main thing that had happened to me and my men when we were on the island. And the reason that it's come out now is because I haven't been too well, and a friend of mine died. Everybody's dying. A friend of mine died last year, and I just thought, well, if there is anything in it, because we've been very ill since. I've had meningitis, all sorts of things since, spinal operations, and anyway. There is a chance that it could be connected with that, but also the odd thing as well is how well I've done when I was in the military. All of a sudden I seem to be put forward for this and put forward for that, and I was doing courses and learning languages, and then when I left the army I was accepted just like that to go on a 4-year education degree. There was lots of things that really didn't make a lot of sense, and it's only been in the last 2 years that I've been able to start to figure it all out, really. I was just going to say about CE5. It was a few months ago I met Miles at Knapp Hill in Wiltshire, and at that time I was going and doing sky watches at least once a week because of something that had happened to me on a sky watch. I believe all this is connected. The details are too long, and it would take me hours and hours to sort of try and join up all the dots of why I got into CE5. But I've done a few of them in this country and abroad, and had a lot of incredible success as far as what I believe is a contact with something that's oh. So it's true, Most Haunted has been here. There is a lot that I can tell you, but to be honest with you, I'm really flagging. And
Go on.
what I will do is invite you to ask questions, okay? And we'll go from there. Maybe I can join some dots up in that way.
What
Okay.
happened to the people in Marconi? I didn't know anything about it.
In Marconi,
Yeah.
what happened was there was lots of unexplained, at least 28, I believe, unexplained deaths, and they all seem to be linked to Marconi GEC in some way or another. People were found not just dead because they committed suicide, but it was the way that they died. There was people who had self-decapitated and stuff like that. It was really very odd. Yeah, so look it up. It's really interesting, and the book is very good as well.
We want to hear what you're saying, please, because otherwise it doesn't make sense, if you can.
Okay. So that's the thing. Also, it happened in such a short space of time in the 80s, and it seemed to happen at around the same time that those containers were shipped back to the UK. I believe that the UK government then, the people in the know then, knew about this stuff and wanted that. They didn't really care about the Falkland Islands, I don't think. And I think the Argies knew as well. In fact, recently, about a year and a half ago, Repsol, the oil giant, the Spanish oil giant, in Argentina was taken over by Argentina. They just walked in and took over all the facilities. They didn't say, oh, we'll buy you out, we'd like to have you as a national asset. They just walked in and took control of Repsol. Argentina, there's a lot of people that's been in power in Argentina that are a bit dubious if you look back through history, to say the least. Any other questions?
Yeah. I'm particularly interested in what you were saying about what started happening to you afterwards, like you were put forward for courses, you were kind of fast-tracked, and then when you left the army, your life took on a good turn. Is that because of your exposure to the stuff, or because they were trying to reward you for what you did, or you must have some sort of instinct, a deeper instinct maybe, as to why suddenly your life was going, quote unquote, quite well as a result of your exposure to whatever it was in those crates?
Yeah, I think it was because I was always quite loyal and very patriotic to begin with, and maybe I was seen as somebody that could be helpful in the future in some way or another, and I have done and helped out with things since, but not recently. But I do agree with that. There has been definitely a connection in some way with my career path, if you like. About 2 years ago, though, it did take a bit of a downward, 2-3 years ago, it took a downward spiral when things got interesting. All of a sudden, I had a phone call one day from a policeman. It's always a policeman. And he didn't say he was a policeman, but I worked out that maybe he was, because he wanted me to go to a police station for a chat. He wasn't being arrested or anything like that. He just wanted me to come in and have a chat with him. And so I resisted and said, no, I don't want to have a chat with you. I don't know who you are. Why should I go and have a chat with you? And he said, well, look, you either come in and have a chat with me, or I'll send somebody out to find you and bring you in. So I said, all right then, where are you? So I went in for the chat, and it was all about something incredibly obscure. You were in the army, weren't you? Yes. You were in the Royal Engineers, weren't you? Yes. You were in the Falkland Islands, weren't you? Yes. Well, we've got information, it was 2 of them, we've got information that you've spoken to somebody about something that happened then, And we're telling you now, we're keeping an eye on you. So I sat there shocked because I didn't know what the hell it was about. When he rang me up, he said, you know what it's about. You need to come in and talk to us. Didn't know, didn't have a clue. And they introduced themselves, not as policemen, but as policemen who worked in a special department, and they were called serious crimes officers. I don't know what that means nowadays. So that was, and it sort of started from there, really. Things started happening, going wrong. I had a relationship breakup. It was totally inexplicable. I finished my contract at my school, and that was the end of that. For some unknown reason, I didn't even want to bother anymore with teaching or being involved in education in any way. Then there was other things as well to do with money and stuff, and being targeted. I was something else that was rather odd. I was sent a speeding fine, and I wasn't even there. I wasn't even in that part of the country, and yet I went to the police station and I said about it, and the officer said, "Look, just pay it, because if you don't, you'll have to go to court and you will have to pay more in the end anyway." So so there's been all that going on. There's been a lot of induced paranoia as far as I'm concerned. I've been made to feel all of a sudden perhaps that they're after me, and there's been quite a bit of evidence to back it up actually. So the details are long and laborious. But I was just giving you a few examples there. Any other questions, or shall we?
John, is there any insight in the origin of the material that was in the containers and what it came here for and why it was taken by Marconi and where it came from?
Yeah, I've since been told that it was. I've been told from a very reliable source that it's been found to be not of this earth. It's from somewhere else. I'm quite sceptical about things, but I'm very open-minded as well. So I'm not going to, sit and listen to somebody saying something and think, "Oh, he's lying about that. Another one that lies." I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to think, well, maybe there's some truth in it, or maybe it's just half a story and he's got the other bit wrong. I was told that it wasn't from this earth. I was told that it was from somewhere else, and I thought, yeah, right, okay, like they do, But I now feel that is an extremely high possibility, and it must have been worth a tremendous amount to get your hands on it first. And I think that's what it was all about, because the Americans did try and stop the task force, They didn't encourage it to go down. We didn't get refueled by the Americans. We got refueled by the Brazilians, not the Americans. Earlier, when I was sat over there listening to the previous speaker, I thought, well, I don't remember it that way. The Americans did everything they could to bloody stop us from going down there. And even on the way back, there was problems with refueling and stuff like that. Even now, I believe, they're still trying to make us give the Falklands back to Argentina. Why would Argentina be so interested in it? Is it because of the good fishing? Is it because of the oil? Well, which oil is it they're interested in? So there could be other places down there, and there is rumours of a huge base on Antarctica somewhere that recently, I can't remember the fella's name, I had it written down, an American recently, high up, one of their politicians, made a visit to Antarctica in January of this year.
Okay.
That's right, yes. And it was totally inexplicable. Why would he go there? Was he going for the town? Was he going to look at the snow? I don't know, but he was there, and he was there for a reason. So there's always lots of mysteries when you don't know the full story, and you're never going to get the full correct story without any blemishes if you live, I'm afraid, here. Because they only tell half truths if you're lucky.
Have you any idea what they wanted this oil for?
Yeah, but I was told it was something to do originally. They tried to use it in circuitry, for computers and stuff like that. That's what I was initially told. I was told that by somebody who worked for Hewlett Packard. That is what they would have tried to use it for. I mean, if you look at your mobile phone, I bet everybody knows how to use their mobile phone and how wonderful it is and how small it is. And if you get to look at the circuitry, how wonderful that is. But none of you will know bloody built it or invented it, which is really odd, isn't it? Because we all know who invented the telephone.
Graham Bell.
That's right, the Scotsman.
How many crates were there?
At least 40, and they were big. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm looking at that image, and you've got 5. They're your men in your unit there.
Yeah.
Are you still in contact with any of those guys now?
Only one of them, the rest are dead.
And under what sort of circumstances are the others dead then? Because you're only young, aren't you? It's only about, I don't know how old you are, I shouldn't ask.
Please say.
About 42.
I like you. No, I'm 58.
Yeah, so,
I'm sorry to say.
isn't it?
It's old now, yes.
4 out of,
It's young for so
Yeah.
many of you to die.
Oh, I see what you mean.
within that group,
Yeah.
which is high, isn't it?
Hmm.
Do you think anybody else, you know, who was stationed on the Falklands at this time would have known anything about it? Because a great friend of mine who I've sadly lost contact with, and he came back terribly upset. He was pathfinders with the Paras. Hamish McCarr.
I wouldn't have known. I worked with the Marines mostly. 4-2 Commando was the group that we seemed to get put with most of the time, but other than that we were behind lines and we were on our own quite a lot, which was a bit tough actually when you think back. But all those people there, bar one, and the one with his back to you with the backpack, Roger, was a good friend of mine for many years, and he died in a strange way, and nobody really knows how he got carbon monoxide poisoning and stabbed. So we don't know what happened. Yes.
Do you know if any of the other people were talking about it then? Because you said that you had that call from the police, or so-called police, and as far as you're concerned, you hadn't spoken about this incident because you didn't really know anything about it, did you? You didn't really know what it was. So do you think they were trying to scare you and to get you paranoid? Was it part of this targeting? And
Yeah, I think they did a good job actually. I have become very paranoid about where I go and who is going to be there. I've been having a lot of treatment at hospital, been there twice this week, and even when I go to the hospital, I'm paranoid about a new face and stuff. I don't trust many people, and I've had better treatment when I've gone abroad, I'm sorry, but it's kept me going, just.
Has this been alluded to in the X-Files, Black Eye?
Sorry.
Has this been alluded to in the X-Files, the Black Eye?
Has it been allergic to?
Has it been alluded to
Oh,
in the X-Files and the Prometheus and films like that?
I don't know. I don't really... See, I'm not really somebody who is into science, what they call science fiction, or into conspiracy theories or anything like that. But I've had to face the fact recently, in the last few years, that things have happened to me and others that I know that don't make sense. You cannot just write things off just like that. And
What do you think the oil was? What was it? Some kind of entity?
what inside? What the oil?
Yeah, 'cause you said it moved. When someone looked in, you said it moved.
Yeah, he said it was oil, but it was it had like a watery film over it, like a yellowy watery film, and it seemed to move towards him when he was peering in. This is what he said. So whether it was too many cigarettes, I'm not sure, but no, I believe what he said. there's been other things as well that are just too much of a coincidence as far as all this is concerned.
What were they refining the material from? Was there a raw material that they were refining?
No, I don't think so. Not there anyway, because it was just the containers with this stuff inside it and the shovel, and that was it. And it was obviously going to be moved in and out. It was obviously going to be moved in and out for some reason, because the ground, although incredibly icy, blue ice, was keyed like you would key an airport runway, like that. It was still very slippery though.
You said that there was a refinery on some fuel, or whatever it was.
That's a bit of it, yeah, supposed to.
And so, do you know what it was for? I mean, if this raw material, this black substance moved towards people, what were they doing with it? What was the refinery there to do with it?
Right, now this is really interesting, because up until about 3 years ago I was working in Spain and I lived near a refinery, and the refinery was huge. That's not huge. Okay, it's big, but it's not huge. It was almost like they were refining something in a different way. Maybe it was to do with that, or maybe it was just all show. A lot of it was living accommodation as well. There was other buildings as well, huts and stuff. But the tanks that you see there, that would supposedly hold crude oil. So, yeah. So
was the container ship British? It was coming back to Britain, was it, after they loaded it on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you surprised to hear the likes of David Griffin talking about it and Miles Johnson? And when did you come across that information, or if you didn't come across it?
I haven't really. I'm sorry, but I haven't really looked at any of that. I know Miles because of the stuff that happened to James Casbolt. I haven't met David Griffin. I was hoping to meet him this weekend, I believe, but he's unable to attend. I would like to meet with him or anybody else that has information concerning this, because you've got to remember this is just from a soldier's perspective what happened. And you know, the fellow that did the talk before me with all these details of politicians and stuff, I was down there, you know, we were shooting at people, we weren't doing that bit, so it's a bit of a different perspective, really.
So how you mentioned James Casbolt, how was that connect? I mean, was that story you were interested in with Miles, or did you know James? Or?
What happened was, with James Casbolt, me and my ex-partner, we were looking on the internet, on YouTube, and it came up about a clone, okay? So that was the hook. And so we looked at the Bases 9, I think, the interview, and it was really very interesting stuff. And as far as James is concerned, you know, I feel really sorry for him, because he may have done things that weren't right, but who gets 12 years for that? That's very odd, isn't it? Or am I just... I mean, there's people committing murder and getting 6 years, I think. It just seemed a bit odd. I mean, I'm not condoning harassment, sexual harassment, or whatever it was he did, but I just think the punishment was a bit odd as well. And also, another thing that I read from the story was that he was sent to have psychiatric reports done on him, and then the judge was told, oh, he's all right, he hasn't got any psychiatric problems. So if he had psychiatric problems, surely that means he was unstable and he was going to be lying and making up stuff. But I think when the judge said that, he actually confirmed that what James had been saying, a lot of it was possibly true. That's just my opinion.
And when was your telephone conversation, just to put it in context, how long ago did that person ring you up and want to have a chat with you?
Not long after I started doing CE5.
And when was that?
And that was in near the end of 2015.
So, yeah. You were seeing, because I've been to Knapp Hill and you mentioned, and I've seen stuff up there myself, it seems like very much like a window to some sort of...
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
It draws people in, doesn't it, as well?
crop circle stuff and that, yeah. So, are you having a positive, do you think, interaction now?
I think I'm having a positive interaction when I go there and I go other places as well, but I think it's coming at a price. And I think you'll all find that as well. I think if you acquire knowledge that other people don't agree with, or it's new or not, you know, not conventional, then even if it's just a relative thinking there's something wrong with you or something, that you've got these ideas, I think there's a price.
Given that you did have a phone call and that your relationship broke up and you didn't get your contract renewed at work and you've become wary of the health authorities, why have you decided to speak? I mean, you've got a great audience here today of really switched on people who will remember this. I mean, it's a brilliant talk.
Well,
Why have you decided to? It's quite a brave thing to do, given what you've said has happened to you in the last couple of years.
thank you. That's a really good question, and thank you for the remarks. The reason I've eventually, because it's been a long time, hasn't it, Miles? Miles has been saying to me, you've got to talk about it, you've got to talk about it. It's been going on for quite a while. And I've been very wary of other people getting involved in this directly or indirectly, because not everybody wants to be questioned, and they don't want anybody to talk about them in a unconventional way, if you like. But I've been so ill this last few months that really I've got the attitude now that I don't need to make anything up. I can stand here and just tell you what happened. That's what happened. If you don't believe me, then fair enough. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But the reason I'm saying now is because I've got to the point now where I just don't bloody care what anybody thinks, really. Sorry.
Could you tell us who the increment are, please? The increments.
The what, sorry?
The increment.
They're meant to be a cadre of ex-special forces, and they do all the dirty business. Links with MI6, all this kind of thing.
It's a good question. I do know the answer to that, but you know, it's not referred to as the increment. I think that's some sort of I don't know where you get that from. The squadron the regiment I was in, we were divided into 5, including signals, into 5 squadrons, and you were selected on the basis of your expertise to do certain jobs. I did lots of work in Northern Ireland and in Africa, oddly enough. I don't know why. So it just depends on what your skill set was, really. There is supposed to be, there's rumours of people going around murdering other people and stuff.
It's a way to do it. It's a sort of like calling card. I think there's the classic one. There's one chap who worked in the security services, found in a hold-all. They always, and then are found hanging in closets. And
Well, that's an open verdict.
And he's my friend.
Yeah, I don't think that those deaths were done by people from the army. Or from, I think that was done possibly. It may have even been outsourced. There's lots of people from, dare I say it, Russia and places like that, who quite easily would come into this country and kill people. Would they? And yet they actually allowed us to know about one not long ago, didn't they? The one who got poisoned with the polonium-210. So there are people around. I don't think they necessarily have to worry about employing UK personnel to do anything like that. They can get them from anywhere on the planet now. It's not...
Loyalty, isn't it? Isn't it the test of loyalty? And as you said, you probably were feeling that you were being groomed. Once you've done this particular mission, and then all these things start coming your way, promotions and language courses, and they select the most loyal.
It was a case of feeling a bit boxed in. You're right there, because when you're given so much, you do think, you know, I can't mess this up and kick back. But I did kick back quite a bit, actually. But even that seemed to help. So, yeah, so there is somebody who I met and had a very long conversation with about a year ago, and he's been part of the bases set up, I believe. His name's David Shaler. And he probably would be more helpful with that than I would be. I don't know about that. I can only give opinions from my own perspective, really.
You touched briefly on favours you've done abroad in other countries. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, simple things quite often. When I was working in Spain, I was a teacher in Spain, worked at a very good international school there. And if there was any Brits over there, not any Brits, but if there was a certain Brit over there, for instance, who was in trouble in any way, sometimes I would get a phone call. I would get asked to go along and have a look at this person. In other words, have a conversation and find out what the problem was, and act like a go-between, if you like, between this person and other people in the box in London. If you know what the box is. Or have I said too much? Do some research. Okay, you'll better find out.
You mentioned you had some other campaign medals or anything like that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I was so nervous and worried about coming here today that I thought, well, what's going to happen is they're going to sit there and think, oh, what a load of bullshit that is, you know, what a load of crap. So I thought, right, okay, then I'll take along some stuff with me. So after, if you want to, you can have a look. I've got my campaign, Falkland Islands campaign medal and my Northern Ireland campaign medal. And and I was very fortunate enough to get an MM as well. I think goodness knows what for. And I've got that as well, and that was all Falklands related. And I've got that. I've got photographs of me looking incredibly young, with a uniform that, you know, much clearer than that, in my bag. And I've got a group photo. This is the weird one. I've got a group photo that I couldn't possibly show on here because I probably would be found hanging in a wardrobe somewhere. Because a lot of the people in this photograph are still active. They're still in the regiment, even though they're as old as I am. I've got a photograph there of us training, a training group, a photograph of us all together as well. So just to verify, you know, oh, and I've got my blood donor card because I have problems giving blood. And yeah, that's odd, isn't it? Oh dear.
Why is it odd?
Well, that's very strange actually, because there's two ladies at the back there. I showed one of them, didn't I? My arm. I showed one of the ladies my arm at the back. Whenever they take blood out of me, and they need to on a regular basis at the moment, it's extremely painful. I know it's painful anyway. I know that I'm being a baby, but they've said at the hospital I go to that they can't understand why they have so much trouble getting blood out of me. And they really do have trouble. I'm very badly bruised. Shall I show them? Hang on.
Oh. There's no way you should be doing
And the other arm as well, you know. It's,
Have you suffered ill effects? Do you think some of your health problems might come from your exposure to this substance?
possibly, but I also think that I know it definitely was at one point exposed to radioactive isotopes. Just before I went into the army, I worked for Secure Corps, and I used to pick up, me and another fellow, we used to use a van to go and pick up isotopes and deliver them to hospitals in little boxes. It was all very weird, and we used to use a Geiger counter then to measured before and after and stuff, and quite often it was a bit high, but we did take a lot of notice. I was only about 18.
They're not in shielded canisters, because when I was at Portrait Hospital I used to have these things too. They were in shielded canisters.
No, they were in brown boxes.
It's extremely bad for you.
Well, it could be from that. I mean, that's the problem, isn't it, really? There's lots of things that it could be connected to, like all the pollution as well. I taught in a school a few years ago where there was 2 motorways. It was actually on a motorway junction, and the amount of pollution was incredible. The children would come back into class at the end of play coughing, and that was then. That must have been 11 years ago, so it's even worse there now.
Put it down to any vaccinations that you might have had before you went abroad with the army, because I know that lots of ex-army people have suffered terribly with these.
It could be that, because when we had the phone call, I mentioned earlier we were told to go to Hereford. We had to go there and get all our new kit. What that happens when you go fully combat, you go to a drill hall somewhere, depends what regiment you're in, and they give you completely new kit, and they do they give you new ID, you have your photograph taken, everything's done, and you're given a medical, and they do give you jabs as well, both arms. So it could have been something there.
Had a lot of, he's got a lot of problems from being injected against anthrax, and he has areas of skin where all the pigment has gone, and it's all over the heart meridian. So, you know, he's been very affected by that.
Yeah, I don't think the government really worry too much about how it treats people, really. Any government, any previous government.
Do you regret joining the army?
No.
Even after all of what you just...
I know I'm crazy. No, I don't regret it, because there was a lot of good times. I know that time's going on a bit, isn't it?
No, keep going.
No, time's going on a bit. I just remember this. This is really one of the things that was really exciting. I was at Cologne. Does anybody know where RAF Cologne is?
Yeah,
Wiltshire. RAF Cologne is near Bath, where I come from originally. And we were going to meet in a pub, have a few drinks, and I was still in the regiment, and we were called to stand to. We were told to go to a place called Lucknam Park. Lucknam Park is like a big fancy hotel, and it's right next to the RAF base. And we were told to go there because there'd been a security alert, a security breach. That then was a Skynet listening post, or one of them. And so we went there. There was about 4 or 5 of us, and we were told that something had broken the perimeter and got inside the base, and then had made off again. So could you follow? So we pursued in 2 cars, and we chased something. We chased something all the way from there to a place called Tog Hill. Always remember it, because when we got to the top of Tog Hill, what we were chasing just went zoom up into the air and was gone. And I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't have eaten that steak. It was very odd. But honestly and truthfully, that happened. And, there's been a lot of exciting moments like that.
What year was that? Sorry, roughly?
Roughly, that was 89, 90. Yeah, about that time. Because I think they were going to shut the base down. I know they were selling the houses off and everything in that. The homes for the troops. But then they changed their mind, and there was all new fencing up, and new kit was arriving.
Have you got any other experiences like that?
I'm sorry, yes. When you do C5 Skywatches, lots of weird and wonderful things can happen to you. One really weird one. I was invited to do a CE5, which means when you initiate contact, Skywatch, and it was on top of Silbury Hill. And it's illegal to go up there, by the way, so don't go up there. We went up there and dragged loads of kit up. There was about a dozen of us, and we were up there all night. And excuse me. What happens is you do a lot of meditation, and you use tones and stuff like that to help you initiate a contact. But this got really strange because everybody fell asleep at the same time. And we were being filmed, we had cameras, we were filming it, and we were all like... And then there was this wispy, grey fog going around all of us. And then there was a cat that was jumping on people's laps. And then when we, then when we were out of it, there was these two lights, like a car was driving up the side of the hill, two headlights. And when we got to the edge, because it's quite flat, and it's quite big on top of the hill, when we looked down, there was nothing there. And we were using those bowls you can make a nice tone with, and we stopped. And then it carried on in the field opposite. And there was, Jamie filmed a fiery orange light, an orb sort of thing, and a white one spinning around in the field across the road from the top of the hill. And there was stuff going up in the clouds as well. And no, we weren't smoking anything illegal or anything like that, but I don't think it could have got any better if we had, to be honest. So that was truly strange. Yeah.
Why did you go from being a sensible soldier following God's, Her Majesty's service, so to speak, and then go do the CE5s? And did you physically touch any of that material, the blue ice and the contents of those?
Blue ice I touched, definitely. Definitely touched that.
Is it the ice?
Well, I'm not sure. It was very... I now paint things, and that colour, that blue has been with me, is my favourite colour now and has been for many years. And that and the moon, which I don't howl at very often, but it feels like maybe I should. But answering your question, the first time I got interested in C5 was way back in the early 90s, when a friend of mine said, "You're an outdoors person, aren't you? You like going out and doing strange things at night." He meant fishing. I used to do a lot of fishing at the time. And I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "Come with us. There's this American bloke coming over, and he's going to teach us how to contact UFOs." So I said, "Yeah." So I went to the Woodborough Hill thing in 1992, and that was almost as if we'd all been fed gas or something. Everybody was crazy. And that was before I went to university to do my education degree. Always remember that. It was really... So I sort of kept an interest, but a low profile interest. And oddly enough, how about this for being strange? When I was in the regiment, we used to get our posts for other people that had been living in the house. Because obviously with service houses, a lot of people move on. We kept getting magazines, UFO magazines. I don't know. I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but it's true. And yeah. Okay then, so I'm exhausted.
Okay, everybody around the... Thank you. Very much, sir. Okay, there'll be a short break, and then we'll see if this call